Hey everybody, Richie here from RecklessPixel.com, and as we continue on with our series of learning how to register our images for copyright here within the LensWizard Lightroom series, this is going to be kind of a pickup video from where I left off in the last one, which was what to register and what not to register. In this one, we are going to talk about why to register. We're also going to talk about some myths of, why people think they can rip you off and get away with it, and some other myths that are essentially just poor advice, which I've found mostly comes from attorneys that are not intellectual properties attorneys. And I'm going to let this slideshow just play right here. This is a Lightroom slideshow of just a total random collection of images. So you're going to see some just like weird, interesting stuff, maybe uninteresting stuff go across the screen. But I thought that would be a lot better than me, talking into the camera. Gives you something to visualize on. And it really much plays into what we're talking about, because we're talking about images, not what to register, but why you should register. And, I think there's a couple of really huge questions when it comes to copyright and registering. And one of the big ones is, well, how do I do it? Where do I do it? I have a video on that in this series. But in this one, we're going to talk why you should do it. Because I've talked, to some people who are supposedly a lot smarter than me that just think that, well, no, you really don't have to do that. You don't have to register your images. And they have reasons why. And every one of the reasons that I've ever heard are myths, because there is no reason I can think of why you wouldn't want to register your images for copyright. So let's get right to registering, like why we have to do it, So I'm going to use an analogy right here that's, a pretty simple one. And a pretty simple analogy is, you sold me a car. Okay. I purchased a car from you. I paid you the money. You wrote me out a receipt. So I have a receipt that shows legally I own this car. So that means I can just get in it and drive down the road, right? Well, yes, I can after I register it with the state and get my license plates. Okay. So I have to, register it. So I have a title and a bill of sale that if I want to sell it to somebody else, I can have a little document that proves from the state that I own this car. And then I have to register it with the state in order to put license plates on it so I can drive it. Okay, but I still owned the car. Once I gave you the money and you gave me a receipt, I owned the car. So once I snap the shutter and I create the image of that red Corvette, which is actually a beautiful car, I've now owned that image. Same with this image of these two wonderful ladies. I own the image, but nobody knows that I own it. I can sit there and say I own it and show it to you, but I have to register it with the Library of Congress or the U.S. Copyright Office. So that is why you have to register your images. Now, the other part of why, I guess it's a two-part thing, is you need to register so that somebody knows that it is your image, and you need to register so that if somebody tries to use your image, that you can prove that it's your image. Okay, going back to the car analogy, if I didn't have a document that proved that it was my car and somebody else come along and said, no, it's my car, well, now who's right? I have to have something that shows that I bought the car from you. Maybe I can't find you anymore. And if I can't find you and I don't have a way to prove that I bought the car from you, then anybody can say it's anybody's car. So that's why you need to register your images. And when somebody tries to use your image, you can say, hey, that is my image of Kendall standing on the stairs, and you're not allowed to use it unless I say you can use it. And most often that would me asking you to pay me money for using my image. So with that said, let's go into some of the myths. And for some of these myths, now these are myths, like these are reasons why people think they can rip you off. And for these, I'm just going to go to some of the classic ones that are right in Ed and Jack's book, The Copyright Zone, and I'm just going to read, right from that. Okay, so one of the ones that you hear a lot is, well, I didn't change the work. I didn't change it. I stole this image of Kendall and I just used it just the way it was. I even left your watermark in it. Well, you still stole my image and used it. Okay, so that's like, one of the big ones. Here's another one. I'm using, and this one I love, I'm using the photo for nonprofit and educational purposes. Well, nonprofit and educational purposes are nothing more than just tax status. You still stole my photo. Something that I created. Like right here,
what is this? This is makeup, or this is like a body paint?
Right there, I was paying a makeup artist to apply makeup. So somebody used my image, and I paid for the makeup artist. So let's go down to. I removed it from my website when the copyright holder objected. Well, that one, and I like the analogy that Ed uses here. So you stab me in the chest with a knife, and then once you realized that I didn't like that, you took the knife out. Well, the damage is done. The damage is done. You've already taken, you've taken my intellectual property and used it. The image did not have the copyright symbol. The classic C inside of the circle. That hasn't been required since 1976. So you don't have to have, I have a watermark in a lot of mine, and my watermark does have the little copyright symbol incorporated into it if you look real close at the D at the end of LensWizard. But for the most part, you don't have to have. It does help to have it. It does help. Shows that it is a copyrighted, image. But you don't have to have that in there. And now let's move on to some of the poor advice, that's given to photographers about like copyright and registering and stuff like that. And I'm going to read this one. The big one, the urban legend sized myth that will not go away. If I place my work in a sealed envelope and mail it to myself, I'm protected. Now, this one goes back to my days as a musician, and I used to write songs and poetry and stuff like that. I used to hear that one all the time. If you put your work in an envelope, mail it back to yourself, you're protected as long as it has, a postmark on the... No, all you did was mail something back to yourself, which is actually quite idiotic when you think about it. So photographers are told this same piece of advice, and again, I've heard photographers. I asked them. I said, "Well, who told you that?" And they said, "Well, my attorney. My attorney told me that." And well, it's not an intellectual property attorney. If you were going to have brain surgery, I would hope to God you would go find a brain surgeon and have brain surgeon perform brain surgery, not your general practitioner. Okay, general practitioner, yeah, he's a doctor too, but you don't want him operating on your brain. Okay, so it goes the same with intellectual property. Intellectual property is a specialty. Just any attorney you walk into, sure, he might take your money and tell you he knows what he's doing, but he really doesn't know what he's doing. If you have a problem, and I'm going to do a video on this, like where to go and how to seek out if you are wrongly done, somebody stole your images, things like that. I'm going to do a video just on that. So one more avenue that I want to pursue here when it comes to people stealing your images is a lot of people think, and this one's a big myth, well, it's on the internet. I seen this picture of Kendall with the pearls on the internet, and I just clipped it and used it because it's on the internet. You can do that. No, you can't do that. Okay, you're not allowed to do that. But people think that they can do that. But here's the one thing. So your image gets clipped on the web and it gets used elsewhere on the web. Actually, easier to track it down than you think with digital watermarking and stuff like that. You got to remember, screenshotting is a big thing these days. Screenshots, and then with software that can increase resolution, stuff can be screenshotted and used for print. Now, when something's used in print, it's very hard to find out that your image was stolen. Unless it's going to be on large scale, like National Product, they put it on the cover of a cereal box, probably not going to happen. But if that were to happen, then you would probably maybe notice it. You're walking through the store and you say, hey, there's my image of that car used on this product, something like that. But it can be used on a small scale and you would never know it. But if you were to ever find out, and I used the one story, I read this a long time ago, and this was back before I ever really thought too much about copyright with images, going back several years, that a young lady, when she was a young lady, she had some model photos taken, very amateur model photos, but they looked good. And years later, after she was out of college, a friend of hers noticed that her images had been used on some medical pamphlets at an abortion clinic, states away, in a state that, matter of fact, that she had never even been to. But her friend, or just an acquaintance really, somebody that knew her, seen these and said, hey, I know who that person is. And they went through and followed through and contacted the person and let the person know that I seen your images, remember those model photos that you took back in college. Now, it never was proven how the images were obtained, but they were being used in print on these medical pamphlets that were just being used in this one region of the country. And lo and behold, she found out about it. Okay, and again, this is an old case that I'm going back to, and I was digging around trying to find where I could. I don't know if I read this in Reader's Digest. I believe it was Reader's Digest was where I originally read that story, and I'm still digging around trying to find it. But anyway, she recovered damages for that, and that's what you need to do. So I'm going to put another video up that's going to, if somebody did something to you, stole your images, where you're going to go to, the avenue you would pursue, put it that way, kind of give you a direction. So that's it for this video. Now you know why you need to register your images, and you kind of get some of the myths out of the way. And again, I'm up to almost 13 minutes in this video, and I'm just very glossing over the topic of myths and poor advice. So, I love this image right here of Kendall. That's a composite. That's a composite. Tiffany Steel Stacks, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's an iconic location there. Nick Slot. These are all images that I have copyrighted. Here is coffee shop, coffee bar. Here's headshots. I mean, I could just go on and on. Pretty much every one of these images. This is a classic image, of this longhorn steer out in a meadow. This is a project I worked on. I could just go on and on, which is actually kind of boring, but this is a model that I've worked with many times, Shante. She's also into entertainment media, stuff like that. This is a man who lives by himself with his son and his wife on an island in the Gulf of Thailand. So I copyright just about everything, and I go over in another video what to register, what not to register. You want to register anything that's identifiable. That is very identifiable photo. This here is still kind of identifiable. That building there, model shots, obviously very identifiable. But if you have something, that's just like, now that right there is not identifiable, is a tire from a school bus, and only I know that, but it could be a tire from any truck, not identifiable. I wouldn't register it. These are not my photos. These are ones that I worked on for someone else. Here's Ryan McNally. Easter Bunny photos. I do Easter Bunny photos. So, okay, without further ado, hit like, hit subscribe, and go register your images. Watch the video that shows you how to, create a case and upload them and everything like that. Okay, everybody, have a great day.